Welcome back to the podcast. Today I'm joined by Jack, the sales manager of Alba Cars, and we'll be discussing how to build an amazing, incredible performing sales team and running a dynamic, unique car showroom like ours. So thanks for joining us today, Jack.
Thanks for having me.
So Jack, what's your approach for building a sales team? What do you look for? What makes a great car salesman?
Well, what I would say is I kind of go back to a lot of times when I was hired. I went through quite a few different processes in terms of I had applied or been offered jobs at independent showrooms, agencies, different sales industries. And what I always found was the best performers were always really the hardest workers. The best performers were really like the most honest people. What you tend to find with sales, I think a lot of people think, like you could say to somebody, or people will say to you, okay, I could sell cars really easy. Anybody can sell cars or anybody can sell anything on a day, but can you do it day in, day out, based on how many leads you get or based on how many customers you get? That's the hard part, and there's not that many people. Out of all the people I've hired and all the people I've worked with probably 100 sales reps. 10 to 20% of them are good, and then there's a very small minority that are like elite kind of level because they have the skill set and they have the drive. Some people you find they have all the skill set in the world, but they're a little bit slow or they're a little bit lazy, or maybe they've already got savings and things like that. And then you get people who will run full pelt 100 miles an hour and they've got like no skills behind them. I would rather have the person who's got no skills running full pelt as long as they're very teachable. And now probably over the last 2 or 3 years I've identified the people who are more teachable compared to before. I used to think, you could teach everybody, and you can teach 90% of people, but sometimes some people are just in a way where that's their set structure, that's their set personality, that's their set way of dealing with customers, which is then quite hard to build on.
So what do you look for? You have an interview with a lot of people. I know we bring a lot of our team from the UK. What do you look for? So you're having a Google Meets with somebody, and of course they tell you I'm amazing at this, I'm great at that. What do you look for? What are the signs? What are the tell signs? And I'm sure we've made the wrong decisions before. We've made some amazing decisions before, but as of recently, it's been very consistent in terms of who we bring on board. So what are the signs?
I think when you ever interview anybody, especially in sales, and you ask them a question such as, what makes you stand out from the rest of the team, or why do you think you're a top performer? I think you'd probably agree with me. They always said, nobody works harder than me. I work the hardest, and I don't stop, and all that, which is great. But when you can kind of ask certain questions and, in a sense, put it on them, in the sense of throw objections at them, throw certain scenarios at them. Even ask, a lot of time I ask them for their numbers now. So I'll say, right, can you show me? And a lot of time, sometimes unfortunately people, they don't have the numbers to kind of back up the things they're saying. Especially the last 3 people I've hired who are very, very good. They actually volunteered. 2 of them volunteered and said, look, if you want to see my numbers, actually the first thing I said, I was arranging an interview with somebody, and he went, no worries, I'll just send you my numbers before we take the interview. And I thought, okay, this guy must be good. Do you know what I mean? In his first month, he's not even done a month yet. He's been here for 2.5 weeks, and he's sold 23 cars, which
amazing.
is
That's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other guy, he'd been here 3 weeks, did 37 bookings last month, which is, hopefully we keep that enthusiasm. Now it's about kind of, can you do it again? So I did his review yesterday, and same again, like we were saying before, anybody can do that for 1 month really, but can you do it this month, next month, the month after, without getting burnt out? And really the trick to not being burnt out is the better you are at your job, the more repetition you do, the easier your job is, the less chance of you getting burnt out, which is basically what I kind of discussed with them as well. But
okay, so Jack, obviously most of our sales team are staff who haven't worked in UAE before. They don't have UAE experience, and we bring them across from the UK. Why do you go for that preference? Why do you choose people that have UK experience without the UAE experience?
So a lot of our salespeople we hire directly from Mercedes in the UK, Ireland, We've got a couple of guys from Audi. We've got people from Skoda, Volkswagen, BMW. And the reason for that is they obviously have, there's a really good infrastructure in the UK, not just if you ignore the brand of Mercedes or BMW or whatever, there's a lot of regulations, there's a lot of laws, there's a lot of rights, and what that means is that obviously the bigger companies or any successful company in the UK, they have to adhere to these policies and whatnot. So if, let's say you take a Mercedes-Benz salesperson, he's worked there for 2 years, he already knows let's say the do's and the don'ts. He knows, he's gone through a vetted training program. He's been put in a system where, the automotive industry in the UK is 100 years old.
Yeah.
UAE in itself is 50 years old, or I think it's 51 years old. So you're basically kind of taking people that have that background where you might not necessarily have to change the fundamentals of what they're actually doing, whereas there are a lot of bad habits with, some of the salespeople we've kind of met in the UAE. Not all companies follow the same structure, not all companies follow the same system, and what that kind of leads to, it can lead to like a very messy approach, whereas the approach that we take now, we know on paper works. We get this person with this amount of experience, he worked in this company, he's gone through this training program. Then our job is kind of tweaking them and pointing out things where it's, okay, look, you need to be a little bit better at this. Okay, you're really good at this. Okay, let's work on this for the next month or the next 3 months. If we were to take somebody from the pool of people in the UAE, the pool is very small anyway, and they'd most likely they would have been taught a lot of things that we wouldn't agree with, and then kind of trying to unteach them that is it's not very realistic, I don't think.
Yeah, I think the reputation of some of the car dealerships here in UAE are obviously there for a reason, and we're very cautious, and we want to do things the right way for everybody. And yeah, you're right. It's the team we've built right now is amazing, and it's more, I would say, UK standards. It's more main dealer standards. So how do you set the team's expectations when they're coming all the way across the world from the UK? Everyone has a certain idea about Dubai, right? It's to some, it's a dream city. I'll come, I'll make loads of money, I'll and have an amazing lifestyle. How do you set their expectation during the interview? And would you say the people that have made the decision to come, were their expectations met? Were they surprised, shocked?
I genuinely believe that Alba and what we've created over the last couple of years for a car sales executive would be the pinnacle of their career. In terms of the money you can earn, in terms of the work environment, in terms of even our management style. In the long run, our management style is very hands-off. It's not micromanage or whatever. Maybe for the first 2 or 3 months, it's very, don't do this, let's do this, and so on. But in my mind, if you want good staff retention and you want top performers, if you give them a lot of things, in the sense of like they're very well paid, they have a good, if they take advantage of it, a good work-life balance. Most of them want to work all the time anyway. Then you can set higher demands. So what I mean by that is, if somebody loves their job and appreciates their job and think, I'm probably not going to get a better job than this. I would like to grow within this company. I can see this company's growing. I get paid fairly. I like the work environment. Why would that person not perform? Why would they not think to themselves, well, you know what, I need to kind of make this work because I'm not going to get this opportunity again. So I feel like a lot of these things are kind of done without, we don't tell people that, and we're not verbal about it, but we create that kind of atmosphere where maybe you can't measure it, but I think it's proof in terms of how many people we retain. So when somebody comes over, obviously we give them a job description. We obviously give them specific training materials. We have a sales manual. We have finance details. We then we don't obviously put them on the sales floor for the first few days. They'll spend some time with our purchase department. They'll spend some time with our contact team, the contact center. They'll spend some time with finance, operations. They'll go to the RTA. They'll watch some bank signings and so on. The biggest thing for me when they come, and I do the same kind of system with them, is when they first come, they're very surprised that, oh my God, I don't have to do a handover. Like, they're so happy and they're so excited, and I'm going to sell so many cars and whatever. And that leads into, well, what's probably a salesperson's thing that they hate the most? The handover. So we can give you a really good salary, we'll give you a really good work environment. You're in a growing company. You don't have to do handovers, but that means you've got to sell 25 cars. That means you've got to sell 30 cars. And they're like, yep, I understand, no problem, I'm going to try to do that. And they obviously come in early, they leave late, they want to work hard. The feedback, when they take a lot of things on the chin as well, sometimes you will say, look, you need to do this, you're not good at this, you're not good at that, but they'll say, yeah, okay, how do I do it? Can you watch me? Can you show me? Can you do that? And we'll obviously give them all the time in the world. But yeah, I think that kind of, when somebody appreciates where they're working, you can demand a lot more from them. Like I said, so they have the job description, and it's about them appreciating the different departments. So they'll have a coordinator, and I'll always outline, okay, our purchase department, the person who's leading our purchase department has been a purchase manager in Alba for around 7 years. Mm-hmm. If we've been selling 150, 200 cars a month, and he's been buying the majority of them for the first 4 or 5 of those years, who, honestly, in the whole country, who is better at pricing cars than him? Yeah. So when somebody gives you an objection, I need some discount on the car, do we trust his price or do we trust the customer's price? Yeah. If, for example, you call 10 dealers now, half of them not going to answer. The other half, they'll answer, and there'll be, it'll be a lazy response. It'll be not interested. Yeah, honestly, it's crazy. If you message us on Instagram, Facebook, you call us, we miss around 1 phone call a day, right? We get around 30 to 40 phone calls a day. Yeah. Our response time on Instagram, Facebook, and whatever is about 2 minutes. Yeah. So what we're basically saying to the salesperson is, don't sit there and sell that to the customer and say, 7 years, and our response time is this, and whatever. But you need to understand that you're part of that system. Yeah. And if we think of a process, if we think of something good, okay, does it benefit staff? Does it benefit the company? Does it benefit the customer? And if we think that is the case, then we will improve the process, or we'll change the process. Even yesterday when we had that meeting, what really, like, if we're going to change something, which is a kind of a fundamental change with, let's say, 200 bookings a month and 30, 40 members of staff, what is our objective? We'll say, okay, is this going to make sure that we get more 5-star reviews, which means we have a better service? Yeah. Is that going to take a bit off the staff's, the employees' plate? Because then they're going to have a better work-life balance, and then that leads to staff retention. Mm-hmm. Is that then going to lead to us actually getting better results? Probably. So then you can get a win here, a win here, a win here. It's obviously risky.
Yeah, but it's finding that balance, like, to tick all those boxes. I think we were told to continue that meeting from yesterday as well, to get the right formula. But yeah, you're right. It's difficult to get the perfect mixture. And so, Jack, obviously you talked about retention, and I think you do provide an amazing work environment for the team, and you give them a lot of support. But like you said, there is a lot of pressure that they have to perform in exchange for everything that we do for them. The tough question is, when do you decide, or what makes someone, let's say, get to a stage where they're no longer giving back what they're not supposed to? When do you let someone go? I know retention wise, I think when was the last time someone willingly decided to leave the team?
Nearly 2 years ago now.
Yeah. It's a very high retention.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we had, obviously, in the last couple of years, we've had to let a couple of people go here and there. I feel like any company, especially if you've grown as fast as we are. We've gone from 25 employees when I came here 4 or 5 years ago to now 200. Yeah. There is going to be a few people along the way where it just doesn't work out.
What are the signs? When do you know, like, it's starting to go in the wrong direction, and what makes that final decision?
The thing is now, especially with all the computer systems and all the technology nowadays, you can measure anything you want. Mm-hmm. You can measure how many people, how many customers the salesperson sees. You can measure how quick somebody gets their cars registered. You can measure how many complaints they get. Mm-hmm. You can measure how many Google reviews they get. For me personally, I mean, the kind of be all and end all in terms of gauging if somebody is good at their job is, okay, we're going to give you, or you're going to get 100 people this month or 150 people this month. How many people want to put a deposit down with you? Mm-hmm. If that is a low percentage, such as 15%, 10%, 18%, and it's consistently at that, and we can identify what's going wrong and we give you that feedback, and it's still kind of not working out, then usually after 3 to 6 months, it's something where we've put a lot of time in, you've got the experience and whatnot, and then we kind of make a decision. But a lot of the time, it's fairly easy to see because with the numbers, we obviously record how many test drives we do. We record how many people put a deposit down with us. We record how many cancellations we get and things. And ultimately, it is about how many people you see to how many cars you sell.
Okay, and what's the career growth path for a salesperson at Alba Cars? What's the next step? So you're amazing at sales. Do they want to stick at that and make as much as possible, or is there a next step for the team?
Sometimes they do, to be honest. Some people, they find sales very easy. So, like I was saying before about like you kind of get information sellers and enthusiastic sellers. People who are, let's say, top level information sellers, they find sales very easy to the point where they could come in hungover, they could be tired, they might not be very well. They'll still sell 30 cars that month. If they wanted to progress, it's changed a little bit because I've had like probably 4 different roles in the company now. But the kind of general role would be obviously sales executive, then you get senior sales / team leader, then we have a sales controller, then we have sales manager. Probably the thing I like the most that I've seen is, so 90% of our sales staff we've hired from the UK. We have a couple of people that have moved roles in the last 6-8 months, and through sheer hard work, intelligence, dedication, some of them have doubled, and actually one guy is almost, nearly quadrupled his salary, and it's completely well earned. And there's, another guy that we've put into coordination in terms of finance. He was running a lot of things in operations, and he tripled his salary pretty much. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of good that you can see people growing within the companies, and it's not just sales. There's, we've had people go from after sales to finance to sales and operations and so on.
There was an interesting point there. You mentioned about the information seller, and what's the other type? That's quite an interesting concept that you have. So what are the 2 types?
I don't know if this is like written anywhere, but it's just maybe I've seen it somewhere or whatnot that I can't remember. But for me personally, I've kind of split salespeople up where they are usually one or the other. Sometimes if you get a combination of both, it clicks and they become an absolute superstar. Do you know what I mean? But you get information sellers, and then you get charismatic, enthusiastic sellers. What I mean by that is, if you are someone, so we recently hired my brother, right? And he'll probably agree with me. He's not the most enthusiastic person. He's not somebody that you would, if you looked at him, you wouldn't think, no, he's not a salesman. But he's got very, very good memory, and he can follow A, B, C, D very well. Somebody who can do that, what that means is that they're more of a listener. And when you have customers, if you listen to the majority of what they're saying and you counteract with the answer and you solve their problem, then you've got a high chance of selling them a car. You get people that are charismatic, enthusiastic sellers, where it's kind of like an unteachable thing. There is a saying like the unteachables, and we have a couple of people now that have that, and it's like they'll run 100 miles an hour, and like you hear them and you're like, wow, he's like the best salesperson I've ever met. But actually the results kind of become the same. There's not really, I probably prefer an information seller just because they're a little bit more organized and a bit more regimented.
Predictable and consistent.
Yeah, exactly. But really the outcome can be the same. You can have somebody, selling 25 cars as an information seller. You can have somebody selling 25 cars as an enthusiastic, charismatic seller. What I'm trying to find is, can I make this charismatic, enthusiastic seller an information seller on the day that he's maybe not that enthusiastic, charismatic? So that's kind of like the hard thing, because the issue you find with, let's say, enthusiastic sellers is everything has to be right. If you have a bad night's sleep, you're not that good today. If you have, you didn't realize that your milk's gone out of date and you put it in your porridge, you're not going to be that good today. You drive to work and it's you're not listening to the right songs or whatever. You're just not in the right frame of mind. Whereas an information seller, they might not sell 5 cars in one day, but they can consistently go 1, 2, 1, 2. Whereas the enthusiastic guy is like 5, 0, 5, 0. And I just find that a little bit easier to teach when you have somebody who's based on knowledge and listening. It's
very interesting. Every time I see a salesman, I'm going to try and see what category.
You will see, honestly, genuinely, like you start, if you sit there for a day and you watch them, you go, okay, he's enthusiastic, he's an information seller. Do you know what I mean? So
obviously the main goal of a salesperson is to sell as many cars as possible and keep customers as happy as possible. What other goals are there? What goals do you set for the team? What's the mission to get to that level of selling as many cars as possible? Are there many goals out there? I know you have some strategies that you...
What you find is there's quite a lot of things that you wouldn't think they, let's say, generate profit or help sell more cars, but they actually do. It's just that it's very early on in the process. Mm-hmm. So because obviously the company grows a lot and very quickly, and we change a lot of our systems and we change so many things all the time, we obviously introduce things like KPIs, so key performance indicators. Now, we're quite lucky in the sense of we can give incentives, cash incentives if somebody's good. So, for example, when we introduced a new CRM system, for me, CRM is probably the most important thing if you're going to manage your customers and sell cars and make sure you hit your target. Some people don't always see the value in that. So obviously you'll point it out to them, you'll set a challenge with them and so on, but you can have that added benefit if you say, look, if you are the best at your CRM this month, then there will be an incentive in terms of, like I said, cash or maybe sometimes we used to do, or we've done in the past, incentives for day outs or dinners and things like that. We've had multiple, if somebody's the best at selling warranties. Yeah. Now the thing with warranties, they benefit the customer and they benefit us. It's a lot easier if something does go wrong, the conversation having with the customer is a lot simpler. Bring the car back, let's have a look at it, we'll check it out and then take it from there. Now, if, for example, we sell 50% of our customers' warranties, but we set a KPI and say, look, if you sell the most warranties this month, then there will be another reward for you. You'll quickly see that'll go from 50% to 60%. Yeah. Now, that means 60% of our customers, or an extra 10% of our customers are happier, and it also means the company itself generates a bit more money. Yeah. There's actually things with down payments, which I was quite surprised about, that ignore the warranty for a second. If you said, look, if you take the most down payments this month, you'll get an incentive of X, Y, Z. You'll quickly see that instead of us taking 10% down payments with customers, or 10% of our customers leave a down payment with us, all of a sudden, a third of our customers leave a down payment. Now, if a third of our customers leave a down payment, you have a higher chance of them getting approved. You have, if any of them want to change the car after 6 months, 8 months or whatever, it's much easier to then swap them in and out of a car. You then also have the opportunity, if they want to put a service plan or an extra year's warranty in their finance plan, then they can. So it kind of makes things a little bit more flexible, and then all of a sudden you have more customers that are happier with their finance agreements, the payments are lower, they have an extra year's warranty, and the company benefits. So you can look at it both ways, but I think when we set goals and targets, everybody's on board anyway. But when you kind of outline that these are the KPIs and we talk about them every morning, people, they don't, obviously everybody wants to be first. What I found is nobody wants to be last. Yeah. Right? So it creates this kind of environment. They're like, oh my God, today if I sell a car, I need to make sure I do this. Yeah. And that's kind of what we want. So
obviously you talked about the KPIs and how to measure the KPIs, what kind of mini goals they have, including how many cars they are able to sell and so on. How do your reviews go with the team? I know you have monthly reviews with every salesperson. How do you structure those reviews? What things do you talk about?
The single most important thing for any company is hiring the right person. The second most important thing is making sure that person has a true reflection of their job, or true idea of, okay, these are my strengths and these are my weaknesses. If you don't do a monthly review, you're never going to get that kind of perception, because everybody, if you ask, it's like with interviews, like we said earlier, you ask everybody and they'll say my strengths is X, Y, Z. But when you kind of look at it and you go, okay, well, we've got 10 salespeople and these 7 are always seeing more customers, or these 7 are always selling more warranties, this person might think he's very good at selling warranties. But as a matter of fact, the last 3 months or the last 2 months, he sold the 8th most amount of warranties. So it's kind of, we obviously have all the data recorded and things like that, and we can show them. People don't argue with numbers, and the conversation we have, it's not me against them or whatever. I kind of joked around with the 2 new people I just did their first review. I said, look at it as like sales therapy, right? And it is like, it can maybe sound a little bit cringe, but the point is that it's kind of like a safe space where we go, I don't understand that. Why is this happening? And, you know, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can set this target. And we have people, and it's quite strange to say, we had a guy last month, he did 37 bookings. And he's honestly so good. And I kind of joke with him, I'm like, you need to be faster. You need to speak to more customers. Because I look at it, and the year so far, we've got 2 people, they've probably sold the 2 most amount of cars, but he's seen 200 less people this year. It's like 20, now what is it, like 20, 25 people less a month. If he could be seeing 10, 20 people extra a month, based on how many people about how many cars he sells, he could, 1, earn a lot more money, generate the company a lot more money. 2, you don't have to be in a position where you then, I want to stay an hour later, I want to come in an hour earlier. You can be more time efficient in the showroom. And to be fair, he has got faster. But it's to the point now where, because he's selling so many cars, I'm not going to lie, it's not exactly our priority in terms of making sure, we kind of watch him day in, day out and say, right, stop doing this, move on with this, and so on. But I think the point is that over time, we've seen that he's gone from, let's say, a 15% conversion rate to an 18% conversion rate to a 20% conversion rate. The last 8 months or 9 months, his conversion rate is 25, 26%. Now, I spoke to a few managers that manage in the UK, and they think the standard is 25%, but the clientele in Dubai is a lot harder, and there's a lot less urgency. So a lot of our customers are counted twice or even 3 times sometimes.
I've heard that a lot in the UK, that a lot of customers that show up are coming to buy, and they've kind of decided, and it's also impacted by the finance process in the UK as well. You can literally take the car away the same day you come in, where people who move from the UK to Dubai and they come to buy a car, they're surprised by it's going to be another week to get the car ready.
It's funny, like, because you've got to be really flexible in the sense, because you'll maybe speak to somebody from, I don't know, a different country. Maybe you speak to somebody from Egypt or Jordan or so on, and then you tell them the process. Look, we'll get you the car in a week, and they're like, wow, is that it? Usually it's a month, right? And I'll be sitting there thinking, bloody hell, you're patient. Whereas, like, you say that to somebody from the UK, and they'll go, why can't I take it today? So generally as well, I think that the urgency is the single hardest thing. Obviously the trust, but we have a good name, good reviews, and the right training methods and so on, and we hire people from the right place. But the urgency is probably the single thing that there isn't really let's say a platform or a process or a blueprint to say, right, this is how you create urgency with a customer. So that's then when it comes down to it, you then rely on that trust that you have with them. You spend a lot of time with them, and what we find is, and I think this is, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's actually fairly similar to real estate in the sense of, when I speak to people who are real estate agents, they'll say, I've been working on this guy for 3 months. I met this guy 6 months ago. There's plenty of our salespeople, like, they sell to people from 6 months ago, and I'll recognize them and I'll go, didn't they buy a car? And they go, no. But I've met her 5 times in the showroom, and she's now got her documents ready, and she wants to go for this and put a deposit down. And that customer, obviously, if for this lady, for example, if she didn't trust the salesperson, if our salesperson wasn't reactive and proactive, if she didn't trust the company and like the cars and the big variation of all the cars we're selling, then we would never sell her a car. And I think we apply that concept to every single person that walks through the door, and that's why genuinely I would say, for how many people that walk through, there isn't a better system, but it still comes from doing reviews. With the reviews, all of our top people, we have a guy that consistently sells 30 cars a month. 3 months ago, we changed all our registration process, where it took us around 11 days on average to register cars. We put in a new process in place. Now on average it takes 7.5, 8 days to register cars. But he was still at 10, 11 days. Now, just because he sells 30 cars, he's not exempted from, you can't just do it the old way and whatever. You've got to kind of go with the new process. The last 2 months, he comes up to me every few days, mate, what's my registration time? How am I doing? And so on. Last month and the month before, it was one of the best. It was now like 7 days.
Nice.
So what we're saying is, before, it was actually 13 days, his specific one. His customer, on average, 30 people in a month get their car almost twice as quick. Now that leads into Google reviews, and that leads to this. That actually leads into him getting more referrals and him hitting his target easier.
I know salespeople, they have quite the reputation sometimes whether it's intentional or not, because they are motivated to sell cars and close deals and so on. What's the worst thing a salesperson can do? What's the worst mistake that whether we've had someone do it within our team or in your past experience? How do you rectify that? How do you penalize them? Do you talk to them?
So I would say I don't have that many don'ts and that many kind of things where I think, oh, you know, that's very, very bad. But anyway, so basically I used to work with this salesperson called Derek, right? And this guy, he was a nice guy. He was like, you know, a proper old school stereotypical car salesman back in the UK. And he used to hit his target every month. But what he used to do was stand next to the front gate. And what he would do is, are you buying a car today? No. All right, off you go then. Right? Genuinely he would, right? And then he would find somebody, like maybe a couple come in, or maybe they've already got a deposit on the car from the call center team. And they go, yeah, you're with me, right? And he was just playing the system. But he would get outlined, because they didn't record all the numbers and whatnot. He would get kind of, in our sales meetings, our sales manager would be like, look at Derek, he's great. He does this, he does that, and so on. They actually then implemented these, just collecting how many people walk through the door and so on. And they quickly found out that he would have, I'm not exaggerating, he would have hundreds and hundreds of customers, right? Because we sell 700 cars a month. He would have hundreds and hundreds of customers and sell like 50 cars, right? Out of like 250 people, 300 people. Unfortunately, he got let go of. And to be honest, for a whole year, like I like the guy, but for the whole year I kind of sat there thinking, like, man, he's not good. Like, he's just not good. And I did get a little bit bitter, to be honest. But anyway, so that I would say is the rule. Let's say, do not, there's a saying, don't burn customers, because, and you quickly get found out. You cannot do that in the system we've created. Yeah. You cannot be somebody that has 200 people in a month and sell 20 cars, hit your target, because we won't allow it. It just doesn't happen. So, and to be fair, I think we've been fairly lucky. There's a couple of people in the past that you kind of got to be, let's say, a little bit stricter with the rules on, in terms of taking 4 customers at one time, or sneakily seeing like a certain customer and going, oh, they look good, or they've got documents in their hand, I'm going to go with them. So there's always going to be a little bit of an element of that, because it's human nature, right? But
obviously salespeople can cross some lines at times, and because at the end of the day they want to sell cars. We have created an environment where they have to be very ethical, and we are very strict on that. But is that something that happens? I know, of course, when it comes to new people who join and they come from different environments, sometimes they do cross certain lines. Is there a red line where where you could get fired? Or if it wasn't so major, what do you do to rectify it? What's the penalty if someone, let's say, gave the customer wrong information just to or wasn't clear enough with the information?
Yeah. Well, there's obviously 2 scenarios. There's the scenario of it was something out of our control, and obviously we have an aftercare department. We have a full trained team on how to deal with them kind of issues. If there's the other scenario, which is if we've purposely or maybe said something that we shouldn't have, or got some information wrong, generally we would speak with the salesperson. We would say, look, this is an issue, we will support you, but you kind of need to confront this head on, be really transparent with the customer, explain everything. Then I suppose the disciplinary process kind of depends on their attitude towards that. It's very rare something like this happens. It happened maybe a couple of times in the last year, 2 years maybe. And both times that they take on the chin and say, look, I'm sorry, I want to sort this out, and I really like this customer and I shouldn't have done that kind of thing. If it was to go the other approach, which luckily we've not had to do yet, then we have a disciplinary process in the sense of we can take them off the sales floor. We can then put them in aftercare to get some more training in terms of dealing with maybe doing some service advisor work, or fixing issues with the odd car or something like that. But generally, there is a thing where we give somebody a verbal warning, a written warning, and then a final warning. But yeah, luckily enough, we've not had to do that yet.
Yeah, it's important. We always tell them about transparency, and it always comes back to bite you eventually if you. It's not about lying, but it's about not being fully transparent. You have to tell sometimes there's a lot to say, whether it's about the car, about the finance process, how long it takes. So the more information, the more time you take to explain that to the customer, because you don't know whether they're new to country, they don't understand in terms of the documents, or so the more information you tell the customer, the more understanding they are later on. There's no confusion or misunderstanding. So it's very important.
I remember when I was selling cars that I knew that there's certain cultures, for example, that wouldn't buy a car that had been repainted.
Yeah. And
I knew that if they wouldn't ask, like, I'm ready, I'll put my deposit down, and I'd be sitting there thinking, are you bothered? I need to tell you, kind of thing. Yeah. And it might have 2 panels painted or whatever, and then I would just kind of make it casual and say, look, here's the inspection report, it's had this painted. 99% of the time they're fine, but the problem is everybody has your number. You'll get a phone call at 11 p.m. at night from the customer you know from a year and a half ago. I want to sell my car. Why don't you tell me the car is painted?
Yeah. And
at the end of the day, it's not like the UK, for example, where they call through a landline and they call through this system or whatever. They have your number, and it's Alba has sold the car, but it's also Jack from Alba that sold me the car.
Yeah.
And it's for sure. I think understanding the different cultures, especially when outlining, some people prioritize this, some people this is a non-negotiable, and so on. Yeah, it's
that you're right on point there when it comes to different. There is a car culture, I think, in Dubai, because everybody comes from different places. What's important to some people is very different to others. Like I remember there were customers that would come and there's a scratch on their car, and would say, well, are you going to paint that for me, included in the price? I'd say yes. And you have another customer that would say, don't you dare touch that scratch. They don't want anything painted on the car. And
100%.
Yeah, just have to accommodate.
Yeah.
So, Jack, obviously, when it comes to used car showrooms, there's a lot behind the scenes that happen that, behind all the nice cars and the fancy stuff. What are some of the problems that we've been facing recently in terms of logistics? I've had customers come in and say, I need to test drive that car in the back. Should I come back tonight by the time you take it out? But I think it takes us less than 5 minutes, and people are always shocked. What are some other logistical problems that we've solved? What are some of the things that we still have?
I mean, any logistical change or growth is always a nightmare, to be honest. Because I think you never realise what the knock-on effect, because you could say, we've got this new place, and everyone's like, yeah, great, and then 3 days later you're realising, flipping out, how are we going to do this, how are we going to do that, and that's over here. But for sure, I mean, we've got plenty of drivers. We've just recently changed our new storage. We've got 2 new storage facilities that hold 150 cars, I think, between them, something like that. I was actually saying to somebody that when I first moved here, there was 2 units, which I believe was around 15,000 square feet, and now, 4.5 years later, there's 50,000 square feet of facilities under Alba, which is crazy. And I think same again, if you look at nice new offices and so on, and it just looks like that it just appeared out of nowhere, and there was no legwork that went in behind the scenes. But I think as long as you maintain that with these new storage facilities we've got, that the most important thing is that this is going to maximize our customer service. It's going to speed up how quick we get a car ready in the showroom, speed up how quickly we can get a customer their car, obviously with a pre-delivery inspection that we do. Sometimes, because we don't drive any of the cars, they go on the back of big recovery trucks, flatbed trucks. You might have the car ready to do the inspection right now, but it's in another storage place.
Yeah.
And it takes, we're waiting for one of the recovery drivers to be available. He's available in 6 hours' time. Then takes him 10 minutes to load it on. Then takes him a half hour to drive it back. You kind of lose a day, really, and that is really amplified all over, because you've got, when you send the car for passing at the RTA, you've got just generally when you're trying to do a handover. Maybe if you find a slight issue with the car, it needs a service, you need to top up some, fluids or anything like that in the car, change a tyre, we're not going to drive it anywhere. So the fact now that the biggest change, and I'm very, very happy about, luckily over the last 3 weeks, we've now managed to get 90% of our cars in pretty much in the showroom, right? So that in itself should bring down all the time it takes for the passing of the car, for the PDI of the car, for registering the car, if there's any issues, showing the customer the car. So it's all, for me personally, it's like Christmas.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
it's like you touched on there. In terms of space, I think we're always short on space because we want everything to be close by. I was looking at the numbers. I think 2 months ago we've done over 2,000. I was shocked myself. I know there's a lot of trips. We've done over 2,000 recovery trips in 1 month.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think it all comes down to trying to get everything fast from different places, and the only issue I'd say we have right now when it comes to space is that everything, although not too far away, but it is scattered a little bit. We're trying to bring everything closer, and I think we were very excited, or we're still kind of trying. There's a space next to our showroom. There's a big storage facility we're trying to get, and we're battling with them right now with the lawyers and the contracts and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think bringing everything close is very important.
For sure.
With pricing of cars, I think there's been a journey, and different countries and different showrooms and different places are kind of different stages of that journey. It started off back in the 90s. You'd walk into a car showroom, look at the prices, you had no idea what the car is worth. There was obviously, I think, guide
catalogs and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, but really you just trusted what the salesperson said, and I think that in a lot of places there were things that were unethical, where they would just throw in random high numbers based on what they feel the customer is willing to pay and so on, and that very quickly transitioned when technology came in. And if I want to know the price of a car or a house or a helicopter or anything, you just go online now and find out what it's worth and see what people are selling it for. And
I think that is the beauty, right, with technology, that it's kind of like accelerated everybody's learning or their awareness when it comes. I remember when I was like, if I'm in sales and somebody gives me, is this that type of model, or has it got this amount of horsepower, you pull out your phone.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, you know it for 99% of the cars, but your phone is there for that other 1%.
Yeah.
And I think it is the same thing with customers. If they want to know, like you're saying about houses, even helicopters or whatever, they can really, if they look at that car and it's right in front of them, before they make a decision, they can quickly go on their phone within 5 minutes and work out, okay, am I paying way too much here or not? And the answer is, when you come to Alba, you're not paying too much. Otherwise, we wouldn't. Last month, we sold 255 cars.
Yeah.
If our prices were high or they're expensive and we kind of, wanted the cars sitting around, we wouldn't have done that many cars. And I think, it's a great thing with the internet and so on.
So what do you tell customers when people come in sometimes and ask for 10 or 20,000 discount and say, well, why not? You should give me this discount. There's, like I said, there's a big discount culture when it comes to used cars. What do salespeople tell them?
I think you've got to truly back the people who are buying the cars, and you've got to truly back the transparency and trust what we're about, if that makes sense. So we know that all of our cars are inspected properly. We know that we have one of, if not the best, especially independent warranties in the whole of UAE. And when it comes down to the process and so on, we know we have one of the fastest processes in terms of getting them the car. When we, you know how expensive everything is in the UAE as well, with rents and whatever. When we price something, there is, we price it as a fixed price simply because of the Bizzle and all the sort of online websites and so on nowadays that you can price compare at. Generally, I would just say to a customer, look, if you can see something cheaper online, can you show me? Because sometimes, it's very, very rare, but sometimes they might show you one that's cheaper. And if they do, let's look at that car. Because, and I don't take any bias either, I look at it with like open arms. Sometimes people take it a little bit, like I've had salespeople in the past where they almost try and pick faults with the other vehicle, and it's not about that. It's like, let's look at everything in black and white, and then you'll quickly see, okay, look, this car is 10,000 cheaper than ours, but it's got 10,000 more kilometers. What would you prefer? And it doesn't become that aspect of selling. It's a simple case of, do you want to spend more money and have less kilometers, or do you want to spend less money and have more kilometers? That's your decision. And if you kind of take that approach, and like I said, it's very rare, if I had 10 people come up to me and say, your price is too high, and I say to them 10 people, show me one that's cheaper, 2 of them will come out and say, okay, this is the one. And sometimes you do get a ridiculous one that's maybe American spec or private sale and it's a tiny bit cheaper and things. But same again, that's where you've got a trust and back Alba's process in general, that if you buy this car privately, you're going to end up, if 3 months down the line you have an issue, who you going to call?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go? A lot of the time, especially expats, the comfort, and the way I would kind of explain a warranty to somebody is, the comfort isn't necessarily always knowing that it's covered. The comfort is, right, I need to go back to that place. They're going to tell me what to do and where to go.
I think we're still in celebration of last month. We had an amazing month in September. We sold, I think, a record number of cars ever. When is a good time to sell cars? What's our best months and why? Is there a formula that we discovered? When is the best time to buy cars if you're a buyer?
Generally, I think based on the data we have, it tends to be March for sure, September for sure, then you have October, November. There are other months in there, but I feel like they're still slightly unpredictable.
Sometimes I feel like it's related to schools. Like when schools are on, we're busier. When schools are off, people are traveling. Is there a link, do you think?
In terms of when we're busiest, I think it's harder to say exactly, but when we're quietest, it's easy to see that June and July.
Yeah.
June and July, it's like everybody disappears. Everybody's running around trying to, exhaust every lead that they have.
Yeah. So is that the best time, if I was buying a car, is that the best time to buy a car? Would I find the best deals?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we are, I wouldn't say desperate, but we're like in a position where we're a little bit more flexible when it comes down to maybe a car that's been sitting there for a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. I mean, generally they do sell within 5 or 6 days. If something is there for a couple of weeks, and with the summer months, you don't know, maybe it could sit there for another couple of weeks. But yeah, I would say June and July are probably the best time. Yeah.
When's the worst time to buy a car? When should you not?
Never. I mean, I don't know, it's a tough question, because I feel like I've tried noticing the patterns so many times when we're busy, and we've discussed a few times before, and we're like, right, this is going to be the busiest time, and so on.
Unpredictable.
Yeah, and it just, you don't get the results, and then all of a sudden you think this is going to be a quiet month, and then boom, you do probably the second or third best month you've ever had. But yeah, I think all in all, I mean, you should buy a car when you see the car you want to buy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
recently we started doing lease to own as well. What do you think this is something that is a good idea? I've had some of my friends give me a call who are not eligible for finance, and they were asking me, is this a good idea? Am I venturing into something risky? Is this
what I say to people, and I say this to all the salespeople, is if you've got really good credit history, if you work in a listed company, if you've got a really great record with a bank, take bank finance. What lease to own is designed for is the people that are stuck renting a car month in, month out. I've had people, actually one of the cars we sold, he was renting a car for 7 years.
Wow.
If you work out, like, I didn't work out the exact amount, but if you work out how much money he'd spent in 7 years with nothing left to show for it, fine, he didn't have to pay for the service, or he didn't have to pay for insurance or whatever, but it's all built into the price anyway that he's paying. With lease to own, it puts you in a position where if a lot of the customers, they kind of have the cash anyway, and it's about cash flow for their companies and so on, or maybe they don't have the best credit history and so on, then I would say take it every day, because take it all day. So if I was in that position, I couldn't get bank finance, or I wanted better cash flow, then I would take lease to own straight away, because it puts you in a flexible position, especially now that we're in a position where we only take 10% down payment. You can do a 12-month payment, 2-year payment, 3-year payment, 4-year payment, obviously depending on the age of the vehicle. A lot of these cars are nearly new, so you don't really have to worry too much about the warranty and servicing them. We've sold a lot of the GACs. Last week we did 3 lease to own GS3s, I think they were. They're all 2025s. They've all got 5-year warranties on, I think. So there's no, if you compare that to somebody renting a car, their payment was 2,000 dirhams a month. They're going to own that car once all the payments are paid. So either I buy a brand new car which I like with all the options on, it's a mini SUV and I own it, and I pay 2,000 a month, or I rent a Nissan Sunny that I hate for 2,000 dirhams a month. I know which one I would rather do. And yeah, there's been no real risky aspect or anything like that with it. The people we work with there are really nice, they're really responsive, they're very transparent with the information they give us. And I think the thing I like about it is sometimes with the banks you get there's a bit of a grey area. With them, everything's black and white. If they can do it, they can do it. If they can't do it, they can't do it. And I think that's easy to then communicate that to the customer.
And there's no legal issues if you decide you no longer want to make the payments. In terms of comparison to banks, you owe that money to the bank, and legally you have to pay this back. If you can't afford it anymore, you still need to settle with lease to own. You do have the choice to just say, I don't want to do this anymore, this is not for me, and just give the car back without any legal issues.
And that's, I think, one of the biggest selling points for sure is that. And it just allows a little bit of flexibility when, for sure, most people are expats, most people are going to finance the cars and whatever, but you're never really truly tied in. And I think a lot of the time that's probably people's biggest fear. Like, and there is a bit of a misconception. People think they have to keep the car for 4 years, or even if they're taking bank finance, I'm going to keep the car for 5 years. I've only just moved here, I don't know how long I'm going to stay here for. When in reality, it can be settled at any time, it can be handed back at any time. And I think that gives a lot of power to the customer when they're making a decision. You don't have to, you're not kind of stuck in a corner basically when you're kind of forced to go this way or that way. You are flexible.
So you mentioned GACs there. I call them GACs. So I think this is one of the hot topics in Dubai when it comes to Chinese brands coming into the market. What's your thoughts? Are they good? Can they handle the heat? You hear so many good things and so many bad things, and so many new brand names that you don't really know how to pronounce or say. What's the story with the Chinese cars? Are they really taking over? Is this just a phase?
Well, I've been saying the exact same thing ever since we had the first one maybe 3 years ago, 2.5, 3 years ago.
What was it when we had it?
Was a GS8. It was the old model, maybe 2018, 2019. And I remember, and I sat in it, I went, this is amazing, right? It's a little bit of it's not the most charismatic car, it doesn't have a lot of character, but let's be honest, right? People don't buy a Chevrolet for character. They don't really buy Ford for the style of the car. They don't buy Nissan for the styles of the car or anything like that. You buy it because value for money wise, and let's say in terms of it being pretty solid, that's why you buy it. It's people that don't really like cars, right? The people that like cars, they're always going to buy a Mercedes, a BMW, a Range Rover, anything like that. So and I've said this from the start, I could even see them putting big automotive companies out of business, simply because they offer everything the other companies do, but they're cheaper and they look better.
What about durability? Are they tough?
Well, this is another thing. Like, don't get me wrong. When I first sold the first few of them, and I would say to customers, I'd say, look, I'm not 1,000,000% sure because they're new to the UAE, but you have the warranty to fall back on. And Gargasha, the company, Gargasha have been around for a long time. They're the agency for them here. They run with Mercedes and Alfa Romeo. So, I mean, you've kind of got to go off that and trust that they go with that. And that was at that time, and like I said, that was 2.5, 3 years ago. The amount we've sold in that time, I never ever hear a peep out of the customer. Now, is that because the car's brand new still, or it's only a couple of years old or whatever? We are still in that phase where I can't sit here and say, right, in 5 years' time, that car's going to be 300,000 kilometers. It's going to be running really smooth and it's going to be great. But the point is, after 3 or 4 years, you've had your money's worth out of it anyway, because you're paying, let's say, 80,000 dirhams for a brand new car that has every single thing you can imagine on it, looks pretty cool, and it comes with 4 or 5 years warranty. So let's just say, people, and probably the most common thing we get now is, but what about the depreciation? It used to be reliability and depreciation. Now it's just depreciation. And I say the same thing to them, which is, okay, how long do you plan on keeping the car? Generally, most people say, I'll keep the car for like 3 years, or I'll keep the car until the warranty runs out. Okay, fine. So let's say you keep that car for 3 or 4 years. You drive it, you put 100,000 kilometers on it or 80,000 kilometers on it. That car is still going to be worth 30,000 dirhams, 40,000 dirhams, might be worth more, but just as a safe number, 30 to 40,000 dirhams. Do you not think in 4 or 5 years you've not had to pay for any maintenance repairs on it? They're really economical, so fuel-wise they'll save you. They're not expensive, so the insurance is cheap on them. You fast forward 4 or 5 years or 4 years, you for sure have had your money's worth out of that car, even if the car's lost 70% of the value, right? And I don't think it would lose 70%, but they sell really quickly, they look good, they're economical, and probably in the last 2 or 3 years we've sold, I'd guess, 100 to 150 of them, and I can't remember a single customer coming back or calling us or anything like that.
Now I think the whole world is talking about another important change in the automotive industry with electric cars. And I know some countries like the UK where they've given a deadline of when you can no longer produce or sell electric cars. Do you think there is a meeting point coming? I know you said that Chinese brands are not going to compete with BMWs and Mercedes, but as cars transition to electrical, do you think that could be an opportunity where the Chinese brands take over? Because I know Mercedes are doing electric, BMW is doing electric, but they're not really they're not really very popular, at least in the UAE right now.
The thing is with electric cars, I'm not gonna lie, I'm quite like old school. I think we have like very different views on that. When I first seen them, I thought, wow, this is so cool, this is amazing, this is this. Now, like, if I see one in the showroom, I think, oh, like, because there's always like a new thing on it, and I'm like terrible with change, but there's always a new button that does this, and then if you click this, that goes off here, and that happens. But I do think, as much as I back the Chinese brands and I'll like sing about them all day every day, and I love selling them and I think a lot of customers should buy them, I don't think they'd ever compete with the truly big automotive companies in terms of when you're going into the kind of luxury segment. A lot of the time, just because of the history of the company. So I know I mentioned Ford and Chevrolet and things like that, and Ford has one of the biggest or most thorough histories now of all the automotive companies. But why do you buy a Ford? You buy a Ford because it looks alright, it's pretty solid, like it should be alright, it's pretty safe. That's your view on them, right? And I think that's generally, if you ask most people, they go, it's alright. Right? And when you're buying a car, you could look at the GAC and you look at that and you go, but the GAC does this, GAC does that, that's alright. So that's the competition. When you then compare to a E63 or a GLE and whatever, you're like, but that's a statement. Look at it, look at that, and it does this and it does that, and you still have that. It is a little bit of like snobbery, I suppose. But if sometimes somebody says, I want to look, they'll come in and say, I want to look at a Range Rover, I want to look at a Mercedes, or especially real estate agents, they need to look the part and whatever. It's about the brand. They very rarely come in and say, I just need something that gets me from A to B. When in my mind, I'm like, don't you just need something to get you from A to B? Why don't you buy a GAC? Do you know what I mean? And I suppose you're never really going to swap. I personally don't think you're going to swap, because a lot of the time they're either car enthusiasts or they're very conscious of the image or the look of the car. And yes, Chinese brands, especially nowadays, they are making pretty cool looking cars. I can't pronounce some of them. I think it's like a Taofeng or something like that. But I think it's two different markets. You've got the ones for people that not big car enthusiasts, what can I get for my money? And then you've got the people who go, that's a Mercedes, or that's a Range Rover.
I think that one of the biggest reasons people don't buy Chinese right now, because they are ticking a lot of boxes. The biggest reason is people just say, I don't want to drive a Chinese car because if someone sees me in a Chinese car and it doesn't look good, you know what I mean?
To be honest, they don't even go that far. They just say, no, I don't want to buy a Chinese car. And it is that, like, there's a bit of a stigma with it just because it's Chinese. And I think it is kind of strange. Tesla now, they manufacture most of their cars in China, right? But it's an American brand, so it's like, and that's really to do with branding. We spoke about like branding and things like that before. And
there's even like, there's a brand Hongqi where they make really nice
cool looking cars,
very very nice looking cars, and there's still that stigma around it. I think maybe it would take something major to happen with the Chinese cars to change that image and viewpoint on
it's because of the price point as well. Like I do look at them and I think, that's cool, but would I spend 200,000 on a Chinese car? And that's where, when we're looking at Mercedes, you find one 5 years older, doesn't do as much, it's a bit louder, but it's a Mercedes, you go, that's well nice, that's good, like, and
True.
that's where and where I say like the Chinese brands would that could potentially put a lot of companies out of business because they don't have like an identity, right? Like Chevrolet, what's Chevrolet's identity?
Yeah.
They're not known for being super reliable.
Yeah.
They're not actually known for being really great value for money. They don't look amazing. So what is the selling point? Whereas the China car comes in, GAC or Geely or Geely or whatever, and you look at it and go, bloody hell, I'd much rather have that. It's cheaper, does this, looks better. You wouldn't say that compared to a Mercedes.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? So
Jack, where do you see Alba going in the next 5 years? What's the journey ahead? I know we've just hit a record month last month in terms of sales. What's the next target? What's the next record? Well,
I'm hoping we break the record again this month. Everything's looking like that. I know it's early days, but it feels like we're in that position to do that again. And I feel like we've had some fundamental changes over the last 2 or 3 months in terms of staff, management, and the process in itself, which allows us to then register and book a lot more cars. What I would say is 5 years is a long time. But
I know, especially for us, that things change every year so much.
But I mean, if you look at the last 5 years, I feel like we could do way more than that in the next 5 years. It's almost like a snowball effect. We have for sure, it's like now we've got that proper infrastructure, and you walk around, it feels like a really big, independent showroom that would be in the UK. It's like you've just moved, Evans Halshaw or Arnold Clark or Car Store or whatever, and you've then put it here with our own twist, with our own, identity and culture in the company. And I think now it's just about speed, almost like speeding everything up, smoothing everything over, growing the staff, growing the amount of cars that we can sell. I know we've focused a lot on in the last few months on kind of like crossing the T's and dotting the I's and just making sure everything's really smooth and so on. And I personally, if we say this time next year, I see us having a couple of more salespeople. I see us consistently registering 250 cars every month, which is a fairly big ask, but we're not far away. We're convincing a lot of people to buy cars from us. People are, openly wanting to come to us to buy a lot of cars. Like we discussed about our response time and warranties and things like that. Everything is kind of getting to that point of where it needs to be. And now it's, we're always looking at where's that big hole. And I think it comes down to how long, which we've been focusing on, how long it takes to prep the car. Now, I don't know what it is exactly, but just say hypothetically it was 10 days. If we took that 10 days and slashed it in half and made it 5, we'd have so many more cars to sell quickly. And it wouldn't really make too much of a difference tomorrow or today or even in a couple of weeks' time. But you fast forward 3 months and then all of a sudden everything's rolling. And I think it's the same of if we take a deposit and we need to get that car registered, let's say hypothetically it was 8 days, and we then somehow get that to 4 or 5 days, everything is moving 10 days faster, really. And I think same again, tomorrow you won't really be able to see it, 2 weeks you won't be able to see it. You fast forward 3 to 6 months time and we start going, bloody hell, everything's just it's like clockwork. We're fast here, we're fast there, our team's really good and they're doing this. And like I said about snowballing effects, I think that's the biggest change we'll see now. But I know what'll happen is we'll give it a few months, we'll see everything's running, and then we'll get a magnifying glass out, look around the processes and so on.
We're always going to do that. I feel like there'll always be something that we can do better, and there's always going to be growing pains. There's going to be problems that we don't know of just yet that will come up in months, and we'll. Sometimes it's the fun part of the journey as well, kind of solving these problems and seeing solutions work. When they don't work, it's not so fun, but when they work, we feel like we've obviously achieved something, and it allows us to grow more. Thank you for your time, Jack, and I look forward to having another chat maybe in a few months' time when we break the 250 car ceiling.
Let's do it
soon. Done. Thank you.
Cheers.